So this is our model. So maybe 3 to 4 years ago, we dismantled the organisation and kind of put it back together again based on a research model. Through the acknowledgement that artists are researchers, their practice is based on an issue or a question, and they trial and test and create a body of knowledge. And that information and their experiences is often collected by institutions, higher education institutions, policymakers, and then it goes into a documentation, informs policy, and disappears off and never comes back round. And we thought, well, if the artists on the ground, the creative people, are being asked to provide evidence or information or opinions, then the impact of that work should be fed back round, to be tested, to be trialed against the current situation, because it's rapidly changing. Since 4 years ago, we've got, well, 1,000 different situations. We've had Brexit, we've got the war in the Ukraine, we've got the energy crisis, the Queen's just died. So the government keeps changing, which is really unstable. So there's so many changes going on that this constant need for more information of anybody, it's consultation fatigue, needs to come back to the impact of what you contributed to needs to come back down. So this was the kind of crux of the issue. We also wanted a really porous organisation. We didn't want it to be an enclave. We wanted artists and musicians and other sectors to be able to feed in, advise, critique. So how do we do that? How do we create a structure that more people have influence over the direction of the work? So all of these things were considered, and we realigned the organisation to meet this new model. And it's not set in stone, and we're willing to be challenged on it, and we're really keen to pilot new governance models, new decision making, and to develop all that down. Next slide, please, Sarah. Our previous, so obviously business plans move, so the framework I've just shown you is what we're moving forward with. When Roger set out, these were our YVAN's objectives and sub-objectives. They're not hugely different, to be honest. They're kind of framed and contextualized slightly differently. Move on, please. So one of Roger's first tasks was to collaborate with the sector and find what those key issues for the sector were that we could build our research programme on. The activity to gather the data and the creation of new knowledge. The programme included partnerships with different higher education institutes and through the creation of a voluntary working group who were invested in the issues. It's a testament to Roger McKinley that he was also able to broker 2 collaborative doctoral award researchers embedded into YVAN who are addressing the issues that were discovered. In order to improve support for the visual artists across the region, we needed a deeper understanding of how artists support each other, stay and thrive in Yorkshire and Humber. I'm just making sure I'm doing this right. Yeah. So this is some of the work in our programme, which I'm going to very briefly go through. And next slide, please, Sarah. So the artist's journey. As students emerge from university, they need a good understanding of the landscape into which they are emerging in order to encourage them to stay and contribute to the arts, ecology, health and diversity of the regional offer. The Artist Journey Conference aimed to furnish students with helpful information and direct contact with practitioners and their networks, and to broaden their understanding of local and regional resources, local networks, modes of activity that support the thriving visual arts network. YVAN and Sheffield Hallam University with Block Studios hosted the Artist Journey 4. It was an online platform and consisted of 35, a mixture of Sheffield Hallam University fine arts students and recent graduates, alumni and independent artist practitioners. Speakers were drawn from across Yorkshire and Humber region, each representing a different artist network. This is the rationale. The artist journey was the final day of a 4-day professional practice conference for recent graduates, fine arts students, and early career artists. This was the 4th year the conference ran. It was originally founded by Sheffield Hallam University and YVAN with a funding bid from the Arts Council. The previous collaborations continued to build on this relationship and partnership and invited different guest organisations such as Mansions of the Future, the National Association of Fine Art Educators, the Sheffield Creative Guild to work alongside. Next slide, please. Each year, the conference foregrounds a cultural environment that graduates are entering into and responds to contemporary debate. The conference aims to equip graduates with an understanding of the climate they are entering and the support that is available. And past conferences have responded to diverse and varied routes that artists take, working in collaboration and partnership to enhance sustainability and the porosity of artist practice between disciplines and art school and its localities. This year, the Artist Journey 4 was co-designed as a Commons Forum, a regional strategic level collaboration with existing artist networks, and in the region co-produced through a process of research and intelligence gathering. These are the artists that took part. Leave that there for a minute. We'll be hearing from James a bit, though maybe not about this bit. Okay. Phase 1. The Commons Calling, a desk-based intelligence gathering process that aggregated ideas from the regional arts practitioner community. They were identified through YVAN artist networks, over 150 formally and informally constituted networks. Were approached with questions that included: who has inspired you in the last year? What do you need? And are you where you want to be? These were the starting points for the themes. Follow-up in-depth interviews solicited from the survey looked at deeper narratives. Next slide. Next slide. So these are the themes that came out primarily. Okay, so the phase 2 pulled together everything from phase 1, obviously, and created a report, which much of the information I'm giving you has come out of that report that Roger compiled. This is a quote from Dean Stanford Palmer, which I thought was just worth sharing. I think the upshot is that there is huge amounts of mileage to be had from the cultural sector working with higher educational institutes, and that point of research, like you don't just stop when you leave university. You know, that immediate support might end, but it means networks have a function to play, perhaps in carrying on some of that support. Next slide, please. Okay, so beyond the obvious. Beyond the obvious was designed to increase the region's resilience of the response to COVID-19. Yes, COVID-19, we got there eventually. Impact on artists' practice in the region. The outcomes were planned to amplify and develop YVAN's research framework and to inform, validate and advocate for additional research into change thinking in educational practice and network infrastructure with a throughput of strategic C.E.O. national to enhance their sector advocacy. Next slide. So these are the 3 key programme aspects. So there was beyond the 2 publication, which these are some of the pages from, and there's a smaller booklet some of you have managed to snaffle. Dwell Time podcast, which in the break I've set up on this computer with some headphones. So there are 2 interviews. Well, there's more than 2, but there's 2 recent ones. And Nourish, which is where we supported networks, emerging networks very directly. So these are some of our audience figures. This is from our Arts Council reporting. As you can see, we blew our numbers, which is always nice. Next, thank you. So beyond the obvious 2 publication. Find the right set of notes now. There are a lot of pages, as you can imagine. So, but beyond the two publication developments and publication methodology was revised based on the experience of the artist journey. And it expanded. Initially, there was going to be one artist and one writer, but through the work of the artist journey and the research working group, it was felt this snapshot was inadequate, and the numbers expanded from 2 to 15. This had quite an impact on the organisation because it's not just more people contributing, there's more backroom function required to enable that, but we did it. It was expansive, more voices were heard from different geographies, cultural backgrounds and experiences, and a broader range of age groups and lived experience. It was considered to be more fair and equitable, following a method that aggregated experiences based on a network approach rather than the appointment of, which I think the recruitment to how people get to positions is a really interesting conundrum within the art world, which is still a little bit, you know. Additionally, YVAN is not equitably balanced in terms of its staff and freelance ethnic mix. It was decided to create 3 curators who would programme and commission, and they were drawn from our working group. These external practitioners were not in the employment of YVAN. They are Yen Fong Ling, Glynis Neslan, and Zana Brazil. Each curator then invited 3 artists and 1 writer to contribute original material to the publication. This is part of our ambitions to devolve and give away that decision making. So these were the starting points that the research working group had. And these are our outputs. We only had 150, and you've had the last of them now. They're gone. You can only access it online now. It's become a digital resource. So the success of this methodology of increasing the numbers and how they profiled against different physical and digital locations increased our footprint and our collaborative potential. And it is an approach that we're very keen to take forward, embedding researchers and learning from wider programming. So this was how it happened. We have our own aims and objectives. We have a working group. We have a funding application. We have 3 curators who then, through their own methodologies, invited artists and writers. It's a flawed process, but you've got to start. You've got to give space. You've got to hold space. So this was the launch at the old Post Hall, Sheffield Hallam University, which was well attended. Sarah attended. She might be able to talk to you about how marvellous it was. I had COVID, so I didn't go, sadly. So these are the key findings. So I just wanted to say, if you do get a chance to read the summary by Sunshine Wong, she wasn't one of the invited contributors. She was scrutiny, I believe. And she rightly challenges the project's ability to present the lived impact of intersectionality. So intersectionality is my next conundrum of how we record. You may find some blundering attempt on the feedback form of trying to start to collect this. How do we manage that type of information, really? And the work elicits more questions than it answers, which I would argue a good piece of artwork will always do. And that there are assumptions artists are willing to share their stories. Like, not everybody wants to tell you their life story, and that this project potentially was delivered in the context of decolonialism, and how we manage that relationship also. All very difficult, challenging questions that we are tackling. Okay, podcast. Fine, so the final little bit, not final little bit, but the next final little bit, podcasts. So we worked with Dwell Time. They are an award-winning, not-for-profit arts publication reflecting on mental well-being, produced and curated by Dwell Time Press, which is Alice Bradshaw, Vanessa Haley, and Lenny Israma. They were founded in 2018. Alice Bradshaw was on our board for a short time, and we successfully did some commissioning through a previous programme, which you may have heard of, called Resilience is Futile. Get to the next slide, please. So the two artists that were recorded for podcasts in this round of funding were Celie Sabander from Sheffield and Chinwe Russell from Doncaster. I think they're about 8 minutes, and they're about 8 minutes long, the recordings. I've set them up on there, but you can find them. They're on YouTube. If you just pump those in.
Are they on the website?
I think there is a link on the website as well. So to put some background to the original podcast series, were revisiting conversations with artists that Alice Bradshaw had interviewed as part of her writer in residence through the Resilience is Futile, which was our previous publication, which was in partnership with Corridor 8, and exploring the uncritical term resilience. So I like these podcasts. I'd love to do more of them. I think it's really a really important digital archive of artists being able to speak in the moment. Unfortunately, their production costs are quite prohibitive, so we can't do as many as we'd like. But I would urge you to go and have a little listen. It's like having a host of artists on tap, really talking about their life and their experience. So this a little bit about the history. Okay, next slide. Nourish. So, Nourish. We can go on to the next slide. Just a little bit for you there. So initially we were going to support 3 emerging networks. The Art House in Wakefield, who we are partnered with, managed to support the programme. They saw value in it, so we were able to support 5 networks in the end. There were 5 co-creation sessions per organisation, which took place between June and October in 2021. And they were facilitated by YVAN's cultural co-producer of the time, Georgia Taylor Aguilar. Is that how you pronounce it? Aguilar. This makes me think of Foxy. So Georgia did an amazing job. So much so she left and got another amazing job somewhere else. And then Roger took over the back end of that job. But it was an amazing programme. Everyone benefited. And using a collective agenda setting approach, the networks identified assets, worked through short-term solutions, long-term sustainable questions, and ideas for their organisations. As well as these support sessions where they could explore, their futures, a small amount of funding was provided for them to deliver an activity. It wasn't exclusively public facing, but that was to be encouraged. Fortunately, James is going to be talking about that experience a little later. So these are the networks that were supported. Again, if you go on our website, there's probably reports and information all over the place about them. Thank you. So through the, I'll check the numbers. Okay. So these are the stats if you're interested. Some people like numbers. Thank you. Right then, 34. So through this process of support, the networks were encouraged to reflect on at least one of the following research questions as broad themes to explore and consider. These have been developed by YVAN and seek to address broad issues within the equity, diversity and well-being of artist practice in the region, and whose knowledge and who speaks for whom. Question 1. How is knowledge embedded in artist networks and communities shared to increase support for artistic practice? Question 2. What are the methods artist networks use to define their own development needs and act on them, and how is this best supported? Next slide, please. So this was the findings. I think there was generally a lot of support for the intervention, and quite often you just need someone to listen. You need a sounding board, someone to just think back, reflect back without an agenda, without their own agenda anyway. Okay, there are 2 slides of findings because we find things. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. So I just wanted to put a little bit more about the research working group, because looking forward, they've got some support on the back of the anti-racist framework revision. They've been given a small budget to have a little bit more autonomy of how to develop the research programme that meets the organisation's aims and objectives. So this is a trial, and it's not fully been implemented yet. We're still working on it, but it is it's quite exciting actually to just give it away. It's really liberating. These are the current members of the research working group. So we have Melissa and Alice with us. They're going to be presenting their research to date and why they come about being where they are a little bit later, but they form a very integral part of our research programme. And that is the end of me. You'll look at